Hi, and welcome. So in this shadow work and goals workshop, we are just going to be looking at goals, what they are, where they come from, how we can shift our focus to create achievable goals that are aligned with our higher purpose. And then in the last half, we're going to go over some shadow work questions to help you with goal creation. So what are goals? According to some definitions, this is just one I pulled from Wikipedia. A goal is an idea of the future or desired result that a person or group of people envision, plan, commit to achieve. People endeavor to reach goals within a finite time by setting deadlines. So if we break down this definition into some keywords, we can see that a goal really has four parts. It is in the future, you have desired results, you create a plan, and there's a deadline. So sounds pretty easy, right? But then why are goals often just so hard to achieve? Now, the first thing is to look at your goals and ask where they're coming from. And this is where shadow work comes into play. So if you're not sure what shadow work is, I like to think of it as a form of self-reflection that uncovers parts of yourself that you unconsciously keep hidden. And so by digging into these unconscious parts, you're going to be able to unlock fears that are keeping you stuck in patterns and preventing you from living your life or, setting goals that are going to allow you to reach your full potential. The shadow work I just think it's really instrumental in allowing you to align with your true purpose instead of, always defaulting to childhood conditioning. And, all of this comes from the ego. And so the ego is defined as the center of the conscious mind. So it's the sense of I, and it's guided by the five senses, so your hearing, your sight, your touch, smell, taste. Taste is the last one. And that's its job is to look at everything, to absorb everything in the external world and judge it as good or bad in order to keep you safe. And so it's always judging, and sometimes it's not always right. Often it's wrong. But when goals are made from the ego, they're based solely on the external world, on the five sense reality. And it does not take into account your internal world. And that which, is going to leave blind spots. So when you're making goals, you're not taking into account all the pieces. And so this is why when you obtain solely ego-based goals, they're really not going to always bring you the satisfaction. And then so usually the obvious default answer we typically go to is, well, I need more. I need a bigger, newer house or a faster car, or I need to earn more money, more weight loss, more material goods, more power, just more. You're always kind of chasing the dragon, so to speak. Now, I know a lot of people, sometimes you've set goals, you've achieved it, and then you realize it's not what you wanted, or it's not filling the void that you wanted it to fill. Or, have you ever stubbornly held on to a goal, just waiting for the good feelings to come? You worked so hard towards it and you got it. And then when do you let it go? When do you admit that goal you set was never going to get you what you wanted it to get you? And so that kind of leads us now to well, if not ego goals, then what are we basing anything on anymore? And it's really hard not to set goals based on material desires. After all, we have five senses to experience these types of goals. And it's not wrong to set ego-based goals. It's just that something is missing. So your goals aren't always going to hit the target. And one of the main problems is that we often use the feeling of achieving the goal as a reward and not a guiding principle. So the driving force behind so many goals often sounds something like, when I get the goal, whatever it is, then I will feel happy. When I lose 20 pounds, then I will be happy. When I get the promotion or I get the fancy car, then I will have success. And this really leaves you unable to feel the happiness or joy or successful until that goal is achieved. And for some people, that's all the motivation they need, and they love that chase, and that's what works for them. But for most people, it really puts the goal and kind of happiness out of sight. And then we just kind of can give up. And then we're going to do this really nasty thing where we use these unobtained goals to beat ourselves up and confirm our bias about why we're unhappy or unworthy. Like, oh, you're always miserable because you're overweight, or you're always miserable because you don't earn enough money. You're unworthy because you don't have the fancy doodads or trinkets. And then this is where shame is going to come into play. And that's going to make those goals and even future or other goals just even harder to obtain. And it's really interesting how sometimes these unattainable goals, they keep you safe. They keep you from changing. Like how often have you found yourself engaging in negative self-talk because you actually set an unrealistic goal that you couldn't meet, and then you interpret that as a character flaw, right? I hear a lot of people think, oh, if I wasn't so rubbish, then I would be thinner. I would have scored more points in the game, or, gotten the promotion. This is really just highlighting how the ego functions. It's keeping you limited because, if you set the unobtainable goal, you can't get it, then you never have to change. So you stay safe. I mean, maybe it's not the best life, but up until now, you've survived. So your ego understands that you will survive it into the future. If you think about getting a promotion at work, then you become a supervisor, then you'll be responsible for other people. You might have to have difficult conversations, deal with conflict. That is a lot of change. And your ego really, really doesn't want that change. So it's going to try and keep you small, keep you limited, keep you from changing. Because, sometimes there can just be a lot of fear and apprehension around change. It's not necessarily good or bad. It just kind of is. So being able to see it for what it is important. So instead of ego goals, I want you to focus on the feeling you'll have when the goal is achieved. So the feeling kind of becomes the goal, and then you can loosen attachments to the external goal and focus on the internal goal. So I like to call these soul goals. And so by focusing on this internal goal, you're going to start heading towards what you need, and not what you think you want, because those are two very different things. They can be very different. And it's really important to remember what has been programmed into us by our family or cultural norms. For example, there's a lot of things we can associate with success, but they might not necessarily be what success looks like for you as an individual. So depending on where you grew up, you might believe that having a big house on an acreage is successful. Another person might believe that living in a penthouse apartment downtown in some really big city, maybe that's a vision of success for them. So, we all want to be successful, but you really need to get in tune with what is success for you, and not necessarily what your family feel is success for you or what society is trying to sell you. Because, there's nothing more deflating than getting the goal and then still feeling empty inside because it wasn't what you needed. And this happens when you become attached to the external, bringing you the feeling, say, of happiness. And then you're going to put on blinders to all the other possibilities that actually would have also allowed happiness into your life or allowed you to feel that. So, right now, we're not even aware of all the possibilities that we're going to have in our life that are going to help us reach our goals. And so if you can focus on the feeling, you can let the details kind of be filled in as they come along. And this is really difficult because you're going to have to let go of control. Now, a lot of us, especially anyone with a lot of anxiety, you really like control. You feel that you have to have control, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you need to trust in yourself, trust in the universe, trust a higher power, whatever it is for you, but that you're going to know what's best and when the time is right. Now, having soul goals, another great reason to have soul goals is when you're in a place where you're not sure what you even want. You just know that you don't have it yet. So, sometimes we can get ourselves into a place where we just know we want something different. We're ready for something different, but we're not even sure what that looks like. So, how do you set a goal when you don't know what the end result is? And that's fine as long as you can focus on the feeling. Then you're going to stay open to any sort of external experience that's going to give you that feeling. And you're not going to get lost in trying to figure out all the details right now. So really embody the feeling of achieving the goal and use that as your guiding principle. So, for example, if you just feel kind of blah or bored, and you're looking for the feeling of excitement or passion for life, when you become really aware of those bodily feelings, you can start just gently moving towards what makes you feel excited or makes you passionate, and then moving away from things that kind of drag you down or are boring or, the old routine that doesn't excite you anymore. And so it can be quite difficult. It can be such a slow shift at first, but as long as you can really key and focus in on that feeling, it'll become more obvious when you feel it during the day, sort of thing. So now there's probably different goal setting things that you've come across, phrases to help you set goals. So for example, real goals and SMART goals, or be SMART goals. And these are great. They're great places to start. And I would run these through. A lot of them cover the same topics or same general subject, but they're good to run your goals through these systems as well. So real goals, and we'll just go them really quick here. Real goals, REAL is an acronym, and it stands for resonate, empower, action, and lucrative. So resonate. Your goals have to resonate with you emotionally and be based on your core values. And so if you don't know what your core values are, you can Google core values. There are lots of quizzes out there that will ask you a bunch of questions and then it'll pop out a list of your values. Or you can also just look up like a personal value keywords, and you might get a list of 200 values, and you just go through and you circle all the ones that resonate with you, and then you can kind of group them. For example, like learning, curiosity, wisdom. They're all fairly similar, so we might group those into one. And pick a word that is the most prominent out of all those things. And it's because you want to get down to sort of 5-10 absolute max of your core values. And that's really going to help you with your goals if you have that, if you know that they resonate with you. Now, E stands for empower. So your goals are going to need to empower you intrinsically. And so what that means is when you talk about them or think about them, it's always sort of with the confirmation of success. So you're going to use like I am or I will phrases. Like you are confirming the success that, I am going to travel the world one day. I am going to get a new job. Not, oh, one day, wouldn't it be nice if I got a promotion? The one day is always in the future. It's may never come because you're not making it a priority or you're not speaking it into action. And action is our next one. So goals require action. You need to figure out the steps to take to move forward. And then it's also going to be really important to celebrate each step. So for small goals, your action steps might be a lot smaller. This might be a really easy question to answer. But if it's a big goal, like if I want to become a doctor, let's say, then you need to have certain classes in high school. Then you need to get certain grades in your undergrad, and you need to take, certain classes. And then you need to, so there's all these different things that you're going to need to do to get into med school. And so kind of helping plan that out in advance can help with your goal, obtaining your goals. And then the last one, your goal needs to be lucrative. So you need to get something out of it, either mentally, emotionally, spiritually, or physically. And usually it's going to be a combination of 2 or 3 of these, or maybe all of them. Setting goals just to sort of get something or obtain something doesn't necessarily work because you're not going to want it badly enough. So making sure your goal is lucrative is important. And so those are real goals. And the Be Smart goals, again, Be Smart is an acronym, and it stands for balanced, evaluated, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And so balanced, your goal is going to need to be balanced. It needs to complement your life direction. And so depending on what your goal is, you may or may not want it to force a huge shift. So be aware of how much in the rest of your life that goal is going to impact. Sometimes we set a goal and then you realize, oh, to achieve that, I need to quit my job and move across the country, but I've got kids and a partner and they're not going to move, or whatever. So you have to make sure the goal is balanced. Evaluated. The goal needs to be evaluated to make sure that it's going to meet the desired change and do what it is set out to do. I've seen this a few times where I've had clients who have this really interesting, maybe great goal, but then they think it's going to change their life, or it's going to have this interesting result. And you always wonder, like, how did you get from A to B? Like, why do you think that goal is going to change your situation? For an example, you see a lot of people quit their job because, oh, it's a toxic work environment, my manager, these people I work with, and then they get a new job, and they hate it. The manager's the same, they're a horrible person, and all my coworkers are idiots. And then you kind of have to start to think, and maybe it's not the jobs, maybe it's your outlook on life that's maybe the goal that you need to change instead of just hopping from job to job to job. The S is going to stand for specific and precise. So the more detail you can add to your goals, the more it's going to increase your success rate. So this is where you're going to want to answer the who, what, where, when, how, and why. And this is going to help you fill in a lot of the blanks and get really clear on, what you're doing, what you're going to do, why you're doing it, who's involved, or, where you need to be to do the goal. All those sorts of things can be really important to get in those details to make it more clear. And then that's also sort of setting that emotional hook of like when you can think about all those fun and exciting things. M stands for measurable. As humans, we really love to measure things and have metrics. It's just going to help you, if you can track your progress, it's just going to help keep you motivated as you go along with your goal. And it is also really important to, so that you know when the goal has been accomplished, or, are you making progress, or do you need to change your approach? And certain things it's easier to track, like obviously anything with numbers like money or a change in weight, that is pretty easy to track. There are a lot of things that aren't as obvious. So being able to figure out exactly what your metrics are to measure the goal is a good thing to remember in the planning stages. Now, A stands for achievable and obtainable. You really want to make sure that you have the confidence and a positive outlook. They're really going to be essential to maintaining momentum towards your goal. Sometimes we set really unobtainable goals. Like I said, our ego can do that to keep us stuck, to keep us from actually progressing. So when you are setting goals, is it achievable? Is it obtainable? Do you actually really want that? And that can be hard to flush out sometimes because you don't know. But at least if you can ask yourself that question, hopefully you may be able to dig in a little bit deeper than just the surface. And so the R stands for realistic and relevant. Your goal must be related to something that you are willing and able to work towards. This definitely hits on a lot of ego goals. So sometimes someone else is setting a goal for you and you're not willing to work towards that. So you need to be really aware of where the idea of the goal came from, and sort of what's going on, and are you willing to work for it? Sometimes you're not, and then if you're not, that's okay, that's fine. You just need to maybe put that goal to rest and not waste your time and energy worrying about it, or maybe beating yourself up about it, and set yourself a new goal. And then lastly, T is time bound. So you're going to need to have a time frame. As I said before, someday the future is always in the future. It's never going to happen. So this is where, you really need to have, this is also going to help you with your metrics. If you say, okay, step 1 of the goal, when you're planning it out, needs to be done in 3 weeks. And then step 2, I'm going to do during this time period. Step 3 and 4 can kind of be done at the same time. Step 4 is just going to take a lot longer, so start it early. Having that time boundness allows you to keep yourself accountable. Check up if you're, are your metrics working? Are you getting those measurables? And then it's also going to kind of force you to remember to celebrate your wins, because that's another really big thing with goals, is celebrating your wins and your successes to keep you moving forward. And so these Be Smart and Real goals, they've covered a lot, and they're a great place to start. They cover the basics. They're great tools for you to have so that you can sort of have the greatest potential for success, but they don't really necessarily help weed out all the flaws from the ego goals. So to do this, you're going to need to ask yourself more questions, and focus on the inner reflection. And so really reflect on why you want the goals. Your why is always really important, and to focus on the feelings that they bring up during these questions. So I'm going to go over some questions. Before I do that, though, I just want to do a quick grounding meditation. I always find it really helpful to ground myself before doing any journaling or shadow work. And partly because your mind, is always running. And if you ground yourself, you can kind of help sink into the awareness mind and view all these thoughts and, the stories in your mind. You can help view them at an arm's length, and you can watch them and not get caught up in them. And when you're doing shadow work and answering these questions, you're probably going to be triggered. Your mind is going to start racing, and it's going to be really important that you are able to take a step back, just like close your eyes for a second and take a few deep breaths. So if you want to take a couple really deep breaths right now, just sort of in through the nose and then out through the mouth. And just really feel yourself grounded in your chair. Or if you're on the couch, feel yourself really supported by the cushions. And I want you to feel and sort of focus on your energy coming back into your center. And take note of any sort of feelings or sensations in your body that are trying to get your attention. Is there tightness in the chest, or tingling in the legs, or is there some pressure in your throat? Something that wants to be voiced. And now bring into mind a goal that you want to obtain. It can be a small goal, it can be a big goal. Just whatever comes into your mind now. And take note of any sensations you feel in your body when you think about this goal. Is it excitement? Is it maybe foreboding? It could be maybe nothing at all. That's okay too. We're really trying to be in a space of non-judgment about what's coming up. And so take one more really deep breath into the belly. And when releasing it, with releasing any tension and stress and worry about the goal. And then you can start into the questions. So for the first question is, what is my goal? Is it a thing, a feeling, a situation, or an experience? And I want you to get really clear on the goal. Do you want to buy a new car? Do you want to go traveling? Do you want to get into university? Do you want to find a partner? Do you just want to perfect baking macarons? Big or small goals. Life is full of goals, all different shapes and sizes. And once you get kind of clear on that, I want you to figure out, or then ask yourself, why do you want this goal? What gap in your life will this goal fill? And your why is always really important, because that is what motivates you. That's what pushes you forward in life, is the why. And so, if you're thinking about what gap in my life will be filled by owning a car, because maybe you don't own a car right now. Write down all of the things that you're missing out on because you don't have a car. So, maybe you just really hate waiting for the bus because sometimes it's late, or maybe you can't go to certain events or functions because the bus doesn't run that late in your area, or maybe you really want to drive places that you can't get to without a vehicle. All of these things are your why. And then question 3 is, how will you be different if you achieve this goal? And this can be a tough question to answer. A lot of times you kind of just come up with the answer, well, life would just be so much easier. And yes, that's probably true, but also maybe not. When you achieve a goal, you're in a new space, right? You maybe have leveled up. And with that comes new problems that you aren't able to see right now. So yes, life may be easier, it may not be easier. Maybe it'll just be different. But how are you specifically going to be different if you achieve that goal? If your goal is to travel, you're going to learn about different cultures, and maybe you're going to have a completely different outlook on life if you go somewhere that's very different to where you live right now. So try and dig really deep with that question. And sometimes you might need to journal a lot, like just keep writing and writing and writing, and see what comes up. Try not stopping just at 1 or 2 sentences. I mean, if it's a small goal, it might only be 1 or 2 sentences, but there's usually more often than not, there is a lot of gold in that question. Moving on to question number 4. Why do you feel you have not been able to achieve this goal? And so this is where you're going to really need to engage your awareness mind, and watch the negative self-talk that starts coming up with this about why you have not been able to achieve this goal. And yeah, you're watching the ego stories. You're watching them at an arm's length. You don't want to buy into them. You don't want to get swept away with them. And this is where you really have to start questioning yourself or your inner mind. Is that true? Is that really going to happen? Is that really why I have not been able to achieve the goal? What else is going on there? So for example, if you always wanted to buy, a big ticket item, but you've just never had the money, money mindset is a huge issue for a lot of people. And there are lots of family stories about money, what money even is and who deserves to have it. So with this question, there might be a lot of shadow work, especially around money and your deservingness, your ability to earn it and hold on to it. There's a lot of work that can be done around this question. And so sometimes, if you are in a space where you don't have a lot of money, there's not a lot of extra potential for you, this is where holding on to the feeling of, say, having the car is going to really help steer and shift your external world. So for example, I have a friend that, if she's out and about town and she thinks about buying something like, oh, I'm just going to go to a coffee shop and have a nice coffee and a cookie or something. And then if she talks herself out of it because, there's a big thing she wants to purchase, she'll go home and she'll write down, the $5 or $10 or what it is she would have spent at the shop that day. And then at the end of the month or every couple months, she'll add all of that up. And then she takes that money and puts it into a savings account, because that's money that she would have spent But because she has a big ticket item she's saving up for, that helps shift how she walks or how she purchases in her external world. So having that internal compass kind of driving you towards your goal can really help shift things, and you may see some changes along that line. So question number 5 is, what kind of person already has the goals I want? And why do you think you don't have these qualities? And so if you've been doing a lot of shadow work, you might have come across golden shadows. And these are pieces that we've tucked away in our shadow, but we would typically attribute positive qualities to. So a lot of times we tuck stuff in our shadow that we give negative connotations to, and then so we can be reluctant to pull them out of the shadow. But say anger is one. A lot of people tuck anger in their shadow because anger is bad and scary. But also maybe you were a really bossy kid and you got told off by your parents or a teacher for being too bossy, for trying to organize the playground. And maybe you weren't doing it in a really nice way, but those are also your leadership skills. So you're going to potentially be tucking those into your shadow. And so if you look up to someone who's a really great leader, and you think, oh, I could never do that, that's part of your golden shadow that you need to excavate. So when you look at what kind of person already has these goals, that's something that maybe you also have, you just won't allow yourself to see it. And then question 6 is going to be, what is holding me back from being that person right now? And ask yourself, is that true? Every quick automatic answer your ego gives you, ask yourself, is that true? And this is where it can be really, these last few questions, it can be really helpful to have a coach kind of guide you through these questions and help keep you curious and help keep you grounded, so that you can actually get underneath the ego stories and the fear and the resistance. Because, so an example you hear a lot is, I really want to raise, I need to earn more money, but I work in a unionized position. There are no options for raises. And this is really tricky. This is a hard situation to be in for sure. So you may not be able to get a raise in your current job, but is there a management position in the same company that you might be able to move into? This is often an option that people don't like. And then the next question number 7, can help with that, is what are all the ways I can achieve my goal? And so with this question, you want to think of all of the ways, real or fantasy, honestly. Just really open yourself up to the unlimited potential of, you want to raise, means you want to earn more money. So what other ways can you earn more money? So if you can't get a raise at your current job, does that mean you have to look for a new employer? Now, this is scary. It's so scary that most people would rather stay small and stay stuck than to look for the obvious solution, which is to get a different job. That's not easy. It's super scary. It's really hard. But is it harder staying in the same place and not changing? And just a warning with this example, you're also really going to need to question yourself, is earning more money really going to make the job more tolerable, and for how long? So if you're really resisting getting a new job or going into a management position, you just want more money for doing exactly the same thing that you're doing now, but you hate your job, then is earning more money going to make it any better? I mean, for a little while, maybe, but for how long? So if your ego is not letting you see any other options, then I would suggest that you might have the wrong goal, because there are options. You might not like them is typically what's going on there. And so the last question is another sort of difficult question, but you need to look at, the question is who will be affected by my goal, and what involvement would I like from them, physically or emotional support. And just keep in mind that this is an aspect that you can't control. So be really aware. You just need to be really aware of when you desire someone else's involvement. Because a lot of times we allow that to hold us back, to prevent us from moving forward. So a really great example is a lot of kids, teenagers, even adults, right? A lot of people never move forward because they want their parents' approval. So, if you're a teen and you really want to go into trade school, but your parents want you to go into university, what's your goal? What's their goal for you? Because, maybe they think university is best, but you have a lot of friends that have university degrees and are working minimum wage jobs with no prospect of employment in their field that they spent a lot of time and money and energy working towards. So for you, maybe you really love construction and you want to own your own construction business, and the trades are a great way to get in and do that. So yeah, just being aware of what your goals are and what involvement you emotionally or physically want of other people. And can you let that go? Can you move forward without your parents' approval? And this is hard. It can be really difficult separating the two, especially because you're so connected, and most of us do want to appease our parents. So a lot of questions. You're going to have a lot of journaling to do. Don't feel that you have to do this all in one sitting. You can answer, if you can't get an answer to some of them, maybe skip to the next one, and then later that day or the next day, come back to it. But there's always something there. You just your ego might not be allowing it to come through. So you just need to, keep working on it. And, goal setting is rarely a one and done sort of thing. So I encourage you to set an alarm in your calendar, either in like 1 month from now, 3 months from now, a year from now, assuming you set long-term goals. If you set short-term goals, maybe 2 days from now or a week from now, or that's when you check up on yourself. And this is revisiting your goals is going to help you acknowledge progress. It's going to reconfirm your commitment, make yourself accountable. And that's all part of the metrics and being able to measure your goals and celebrate your successes. Please don't forget to celebrate successes. I usually do until a goal reminder comes up. And I'm like, oh yeah, look at all the things I've done. But also coming back to your goals is going to, and setting these reminders is going to allow you the space to sort of shift or alter the goals or the direction that you need to go in. Often, you start working towards your goal and you may realize kind of halfway there that things aren't quite lining up, that maybe you need to shift your target. Maybe the wants and the needs are a bit more clear now. A lot of times when you start off on a goal, you have one thing in your mind and you get a few steps along the path, maybe you around the corner and you see something that you never even knew was possible before. And so don't think of that as a loss or a failure. You needed to walk the first path till you got around the corner before you could see the second option. And that's, what a lot of people talk about, failing forward. You tried the one thing, and now for sure it's not going to work for you. So now you get to try the next thing. And it can be frustrating. I know we all just want to figure it out and get it done, but that's not how life works, unfortunately. I always just think the best thing, even if you have to start from scratch, it's better to be moving forward and making progress. There's nothing worse than sitting in a space and being like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm miserable here, but I don't know what changes to make. And then, kind of waiting for the light to shine on what you're supposed to do. And then, 6 months or maybe a year goes by and you're still in the same spot because you're too afraid to make a goal. You're too afraid to make change. And that's what I think is sad. And I'll just read out a quote from Carl Jung. If you don't know, Carl Jung is he is the founder of shadow work. And he has a quote on goals that I think really help highlight this point. And so he says, when goals go, meaning goes. And when meaning goes, purpose goes. When purpose goes, life goes dead in our hands. And so this is really highlighting that it is up to you to set your goals, to take control of your life and to make sure things happen, to set yourself up for success. And that's all these goal questions are all helping you set yourself up for success.